brilliant Barnabas. Hello, I'm Malcolm Cox and welcome to Tuesday Teaching Tips on the character of Barnabas. One of my favourite characters of the New Testament, perhaps the most neglected of all New Testament characters in terms of preaching and teaching. And why is Barnabas important for us as we think about our preaching and teaching here? Is because of what it says in Acts chapter 14 verse 1. At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went as usual into the Jewish synagogue. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jews and Greeks believed. Jews and Greeks. Barnabas effective to people from different cultures and different religious backgrounds. Effective in Jerusalem and Cyprus and Antioch and various other places. An amazing character. And in a lot of these recordings I do, I focus on practical things and techniques for how to be a better speaker, and that's useful. But in this series, we're going to focus on character and spirituality and why that made him so effective as a preacher and teacher. Why does it say that in Acts chapter 14 that he spoke so effectively? Not just Paul, but Barnabas as well. What made him effective, and I think it's what made him so effective, was his character and his spirituality. We're going to look at that now as we take one episode each week to go through from Acts 4 to Acts 15 and a bit beyond. So join me as we explore brilliant Barnabas. The next time we meet Barnabas is in Acts chapter 11. Now, some Christians have been spread because of persecution, ended up in Antioch, and they've ended up preaching there to not only to Jews but to Greeks. And some Greeks are becoming Christians up there. Jerusalem hears about it, and who did they choose to send to find out what's going on? Our friend Barnabas. And in verse 22, they send Barnabas, and when he arrived, it says that he saw what the grace of God had done. He was glad and encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord with all their hearts. He was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a great number of people were brought to the Lord. So what do we see here about the spirituality and character of Barnabas? A number of things I would suggest. Firstly, that he's a trusted person. He's willing to be sent from Jerusalem, and they feel comfortable that he's the man to go and investigate an unprecedented situation here in Antioch. He's trusted and he's willing to be sent, a humble man. Secondly, we see that he's a good observer. It says that he saw what the grace of God had done. He saw, he watched, he looked, and he listened. In other words, he didn't arrive in Antioch like, I'm the big guy from Antioch, the elders in Jerusalem have sent me, I'm here to tell you what to do. He turned up without that kind of agenda. His agenda was, let me find out, let me listen, let me look, let me see what God is doing. And then he was able, because of that attitude, to recognize what God was doing, that the grace of God was powerful, and then he was able to encourage them to remain true to the Lord and indeed do even more work with them there for God. So we see this humble, listening, observing attitude in Barnabas as well. And we see that he was then very useful because of that. How does this relate to being more effective as a preacher and a teacher? How did that help him to be so effective, as it says in Acts 14? Well, I think a couple of things. First, the idea of being an observer, being a listener is important. It's very difficult to be an effective preacher and teacher if you are not a good listener, an observer. We need to be people who observe the congregations. I don't mean through a microscope or in some kind of strange way, but just to notice what's going on. How are people feeling? What's going well? What's not going so well? What's a struggle? What's a challenge? Where are the faith issues for the congregation or the group that we are going to be privileged to speak to? So being observant and listening when we're in conversations, in fellowship and in friendship times with people, actually listening and understanding the concerns of their hearts, not just what we are excited to preach about. I've got this latest insight. I've been reading this particular passage in the Bible. These things are all good, but what are the needs? So being a good listener and a good observer are a key part of becoming effective in our preaching and teaching. What do you pick up from this passage about Barnabas? I'd like to know. So let me know what you think. We've got this. Barnabas is amazing. We're very privileged to have this information about him. Let's reflect on brilliant Barnabas. So what do you think about today's passage, what we've learned today about Barnabas? I would love to know your thoughts. So please leave a message anywhere you hear or see this recording. Leave it publicly so that we can learn from each other, because we learn best when we learn in community. And if you know someone who would benefit from this recording, please pass it on to them. And if you could do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, the like button in YouTube, or leave a review in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'd appreciate that because it increases the visibility of these recordings. And I do hope that you are inspired by Barnabas and that you, by adopting some of his character and spirituality, that it'll help you to be as effective as he was in teaching all kinds of people. Until the next time, have a terrific Tuesday and a wonderful week. Take care and God bless.